So UFC 263 Adesanya vs Vettori 2 takes place next weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main events, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, and what an amazing card this is, stacked top to bottom. So let's waste no more time and start with the early prelim opener of Carlos Felipe versus Jake Collier. I feel like this is just a little bit of a logical decision. I'm not really going to go into too much information here. I'm going to go with Carlos Felipe getting the better of Jake Collier here over the 3 rounds. I know he arguably did not beat Justin Tafa in his last fight, but it was a great performance. He showed he's got cardio for for a morbidly obese man. He's got good cardio, and same with Jake Collier. We saw that against Jan Vellante. I would argue that Justin Tafa is taking his career a little bit more seriously than Jan Vellante right now, and because of that, I'm going to be going with Carlos Felipe here. I like his cardio. I really like his boxing. He had a great showing against Sergey Spivak, actually maybe winning the first round against Sergey Spivak as well, and Spivak's been doing pretty well recently, and that was with Carlos Felipe's debut. I like Felipe here. He's got the talent, he's got the skills, he's got the toughness, he's got the youth, he's got the chin. I think I'm going to pick him over Jake Collier, and I will pick Carlos Felipe to win this fight 29-28. Maybe there's a close round that goes to Jake Collier, but I think Carlos Felipe is overall the way better fighter technically. He's got a better chin, he's got better cardio. I think he'll go out there and beat Jake Collier by decision. Moving on up the card, Ziam versus Luigi Vendramini. Now this is a very difficult one. I think I'm going to go with Luigi Vendramini. In all honesty, I'm picking a bit of an underdog here. It's not too much of an underdog. This is a very close odds fight. But Ziam, although beating Jamie Mullarkey tried to grapple with Ziam in that fight and took him down a bunch of times. I arguably thought that Mullarkey could have still won that fight, but he didn't really do enough damage on top with the total strikes. So Ziam ended up getting a decision because he landed some more total strikes on the ground and was just a little bit busier with landing some damaging shots in those grappling exchanges, even whilst being on bottom for a very long time in that fight. Seeing him be held down that easily, though, by a guy in Jamie Mullarkey who is not a grappler whatsoever, I feel like that then becomes an option for Luigi Vendramini. We haven't really seen Luigi Vendramini exposed in any way. I know he lost a fight, but I'd rather lose to Alessio Zaleski dos Santos upper weight class on short notice by flying knee KO than lose to Don Madge on full camp in your own division. I'm going with Luigi Vendramini. I feel like his loss is a little bit more understandable because it was Alessio Zaleski dos Santos on short notice, and I thought Alessio Zaleski dos Santos beat Muslim Salikov in his last fight. He should arguably be on a win streak right now. Either way, I'm going to be going with Luigi Vendramini. Great KO ability, got an amazing finish over Jessin Aryari, who was a former welterweight moving down to the 155-pound division. Luigi Vendramini's got more power in his hands, more versatility with his moves on the feet, in my opinion, as well. I like the pace that he sets. He's got some third-round finishes in his career. Ziam has been finished twice in his career to less than okay opponents by submission. Luigi Vendramini has some first round submissions. He can just pick you up, dunk you, and take your back and choke you out real quick. It's happened previously in his career. I think he's got more options than Ziam. I think Ziam needs to win a decision against Vendramini, whereas Vendramini can win a decision, but he can also get a sub, dominate on the ground, and also get a KO upstairs. I'm going to go with Luigi Vendramini here via more ways to win against Ziam. Moving on up the card, Chase Hooper versus Steven Peterson. Now, I worry about Chase Hooper because this could be the project that failed, okay? The young guy that they won in the UFC, and it could be an absolute horror show, okay? It could end really badly, but I feel like he's probably going to beat Steven Peterson, in all honesty. Now, don't get me wrong, Chase Hooper is not the most technical looking fighter. Luckily, he's facing Steven Peterson. And I actually called this fight next for him. I looked at the entire featherweight roster and I said they're going to do him versus Steven Peterson. I knew they would because out of all of the names on the entire featherweight roster, and I'm not joking about this, you can look through the whole thing, Steven Peterson is arguably the best matchup for Chase Hooper out of absolutely any of them. He doesn't really have KO power, so I doubt he's going to make Chase Hooper pay on the feet or anything like that. He also lost to Alex Caceres, Steven Peterson, and got outclassed pretty much every round. It was a little bit more competitive than the Chase Hooper versus Alex Caceres bout, but still, it's not like Steven Peterson is like on another level to Chase Hooper. He's also a guy who got outstruck by Alex Caceres every single round and lost 30-27. I feel like Chase Hooper is a little bit underrated. He's got got an awkward style. He's very tall. He's very rangy. We've seen a guy with good grappling that's very tall and very rangy do extremely well against Steven Peterson, and that was Luis Pena. And Luis Pena has turned out to maybe not seem so good with his recent performances. I thought he didn't even beat Alex Munoz in his last bout. That was a bit of a robbery. Got given to him for a decision, but whatever. I feel like Luis Pena is not that good, and he was able to get it done against Steven Peterson. And he's arguably exactly the same kind of person that Chase Hooper is. I'm going to go with Chase Hooper. I think he's young enough that we're going to see some real dramatic improvements. I like that he took a little bit of time off. Now, he hasn't taken a crazy amount of time off, but at the same time, I wouldn't like him to be inactive. And speaking of inactivity, Steven Peterson has not been in the cage since 2019. Did not fight once in 2020. Has not fought yet in 2021. You had Chase Hooper fight back in December of 2020. He also fought in the middle part of 2020 as well. He's had 2 fights since Steven Peterson has even stepped foot in the octagon. I think that's going to benefit him. I think he's improving. We saw that in the Peter Barrett fight. He didn't take too many shots upstairs. In fact, Peter Barrett started chopping at the legs. I think Chase Hooper's going to be better, and I think he's improving, which I'm noticing from him. And he's still a guy who beat Daniel Tamer in the first round by ground and pound. And by the way, Daniel Tamer, that was the same Daniel Tamer that went to the second round with some decent opponents, and the third round with Julio Arce, and the second round with Chris Fishgold. Like, I like Daniel Tamer, in all honesty. I think he's a decent fighter. He's very technical. Chase Hooper took some shots in that fight really badly, but he showed that he was tough. I think he's going to be able to get a submission over Steven Peterson here. I really do. Steven Peterson against Luis Pena. In that fight, he got a little bit outranged on the feet. Didn't like it too much. Went for some takedowns. Ended up getting like reversed and nearly submitted. He went for some submissions. Ended up getting reversed in those positions. And eventually Luis Pena would end up on top. I feel like if you're doing that against Chase Hooper, he's going to latch up some kind of submission. And I think Chase Hooper will get a submission in the second round against Steven Peterson. Moving on up the card. Frank Camacho versus Matt Frevola. Man, I'm going to have to go with Matt Frevola. I feel like Frank Camacho is getting to the point in his career where maybe it's time to call it a day. And I think if he does lose this one to Matt Frevola, it's definitely probably time to call it. No, not probably or anything maybe. It's time to call it a day if he loses this one. Now, don't get me wrong, he's lost to some good opponents. Jeff Neal, Drew Dober, Beneil Dariush, Justin James more recently is a real downgrade in who you're losing to. And I think that maybe tells a little bit of a sign. Hasn't really fought too much recently. He's fought once in the past 2 years nearly. I like him. I think he's going to lose this one to Matt Frevola. I think Matt Frevola's very, very underrated as a fighter. I know he got dominated by Arman Sarukian, but please try and remove that from your memory. It's Arman Sarukian. That is not a fair assessment to judge someone by on how they look against Arman Sarukian, because he is an absolute savage. I feel like I'm going to go with Matt Frevola here. Little bit younger, little bit more hungry, still wants to start a career of his own and start making some money of his own. He can go 3 rounds hard, he can grapple well. Well, not against Arman Sarukian, but he can grapple pretty well. Got a good chin, got some good power as well. I feel like he's going to go out there and get the job done over Frank Camacho, who I think is a little bit too damaged at this point in his career. And I'll actually call a TKO finish for Matt Frevola at some point in the first round. I think they get into a scrappy brawl and Matt Frevola's the younger guy with a better chin, with maybe more power and speed, and comes out on top of it against Frank Camacho. Moving on up the card, Pannie Kianzad versus Alexis Davis is for some reason above all of those other fights I've just read out, but fair play, they're ticking boxes. Pannie Kianzad, Alexis Davis, I'm going to go with Pannie Kianzad here. Alexis Davis, she's alright. She's got some good takedowns. She used that in the last fight against Sabino Marzo. Ended up on top, landing some total strikes. Won the fight based on that every single round nearly. I'm going to go with Pannie Kianzad here because I feel like she's definitely going to get the better of Alexis Davis on the feet. Sabino Marzo was able to do that as well. I think Pannie Kianzad can replicate that. But Pannie Kianzad, one thing that I'm looking for here in her stats is I believe she has like an 85% takedown defense rate. She's got really, really underrated takedown defense. She's the younger girl, 29 years of age, still got a career ahead of her. I think she's going to be improving more in between each fight. And because of that takedown defense, and also a bit of a size advantage that she's going to have over Alexis Davis, she is a bit of a bigger girl. She's actually got similar levels of experience. Like, she's got a better record by far as well. I'm going to go with Pannie Kianzad here. She's fought some of the best girls in the division, and I think she's got good enough takedown defense to beat Alexis Davis on the feet and avoid the takedowns. I'm going with Pannie Kianzad by unanimous decision, 30-27. Moving on up the card, Movsar Evloev versus Hakeem Dawodu. I'm going with Hakeem Dawodu. I think I'm going to pick against Movsar Evloev here. I think he's going to lose his O. I think this is a very good matchup for Hakeem Dawodu. I think it's going to take place on the feet. I don't see Movsar Evloev having the level of grappling necessary offensively to really grind out Dawodu on the ground. Zubaira Tukhugov had a moment in round 2 where he got Hakeem Dawodu to the ground. No damage was really done whatsoever, and Dawodu ended up okay in the 3rd round and actually started walking down Zubaira Tukhugov. Movsar Evloev has got good cardio, but there just seems to be a little bit like of no power in his hands. And don't get me wrong, Dawodu's got some pillow fists as well. But he's got a little bit of an inch reach advantage, which is going to help him in those stand-up exchanges. He's a more... I feel like he's fought some better guys. And also, I want to look at 2 wins that both of them have. Movsar Evloev's against Enrique Barzola, and Hakeem Dawodu's over Julio Arce. I consider Enrique Barzola and Julio Arce around a similar level of opponent, in all honesty. And listen, man, Enrique Barzola has fought as low as bantamweight, and he arguably could have won that fight against Movsar Evloev. I know it was a unanimous decision, and Evloev got some takedowns in that fight that swayed the opinion of the judges, but Barzola outlanded him quite clearly in that fight. It was a very close one, and I argue it could actually go to Movsar Evloev based on the takedowns. Also, I think he landed the better shots in the fight as well. I feel like I'm going to go with Hakeem Dawodu here. I just haven't been too amazingly impressed by Evloev unless it's Mike Grundy trying to take him down. And Mike Grundy just kind of got schooled exactly the same way against Lando Venata as well, so it kind of takes away from that win. And Nick Lentz was a split decision. No! You do not go to a split decision with Nick Lentz. Arnold Allen beat him 30-27 with a broken fucking hand. You do not go to a split decision with Nick Lentz when he takes a fight with you on short notice. That just isn't fucking allowed. I understand it was not a split decision whatsoever, and whatever judge gave it that was absolutely fucking confused. But the fact that that fight was close is an absolute fucking disgrace to MMA. And that's what Evloev is. And I'm going to definitely be going with Hakeem Dawodu here. I think he's a little bit more technical on the feet. He's got the range advantage. I think he's got great cardio in the later rounds as well, which is what Evloev usually does to his opponents. I think Hakeem Dawodu can steal the first 2 rounds and survive the 3rd and win himself a 29-28 unanimous decision. I'm going with Dawodu. Another split decision win. Nice. Hakeem Dawodu gets it done. Moving on up the card, Lauren Murphy versus Joanne Calderwood. I'm going with Joanne Calderwood. I've watched the pair of them fight, and this is women's divisions and women's flyweight as well, so it's the worst of all of them. I've watched a pair of them fight a couple of times, side by side. Joanne Calderwood does stuff technically, and she looks good when she throws her shots, and she does it pretty technically. She's got great knees in the clinch. She had a great performance against Jessica Eye in her last fight. Looked better than ever in her last fight against Jessica Eye as well. They're both pretty old girls. Lauren Murphy 37, Joanne Calderwood 35. Obviously, that's going to be a bit of an advantage. Lauren Murphy has a bit more reach, but Joanne Calderwood is a bigger girl. I think she's going to be a little bit taller than Lauren Murphy out there, and also probably weigh a little bit more. Lauren Murphy and Joanne Calderwood. I've watched both of them fight opponents. Joanne Calderwood looks good at fighting. Lauren Murphy does not look good at fighting whatsoever. I have no idea how she has even made it to a position to call out any kind of title shot. But that's what this is in women's flyweight. She arguably didn't even beat Roxanne Modafferi, but well, no, she did beat Roxanne Modafferi, but she arguably didn't even beat Andrea Lee. And Andrea Lee is not even a bad fighter, so that's not even a bad thing, but I'm just saying. She's not that good. And she lost all of her fights at bantamweight, pretty much. She lost to Caitlin Chookagian in this division, made it somewhat competitive, but again, I don't know what that means. She just doesn't look technical. And Joanne Calderwood looks technically okay. So I'm going to be going with the technically okay fighter, who actually looks like they've actually trained MMA. I don't think Lauren Murphy's that good. And yeah, I'm going to... I mean, This is the fucking prediction. I'm going with Joanne Calderwood. She looks like she's actually trained MMA before. Moving on up the card to someone else on the card, who is Eryk Anders versus Darren Stewart. A rematch that's being made because, of course, before, not too long ago, Eryk Anders landed an illegal knee on Darren Stewart, and now the rematch is being made. It ended in a no contest. Darren Stewart, of course, the illegal knees have been going on quite a bit now since Aljamain Sterling told everyone that you can basically get a free win if you just act like something hurt you really bad, which is a really bad thing to set a line on in the sport, because I feel like it's been happening more often. Either way, the matchup has been made. I'm really looking forward to it. It's hard not to pick Eryk Anders here. I actually had Darren Stewart winning the first fight. Not winning it in terms of how the fight went. I mean, like, when I first predicted this fight, I was picking Darren Stewart. Eryk Anders proved me wrong. In all honesty, I'm going to have to take that. This is the same way I feel about an Aljo versus Piotr Yan rematch. Like, I picked Aljo on the lead up. Boy, was I fucking wrong. It's time to learn from that and move forward. And what do you know? It ended in the same way by a legal knee. This happened in March. It's 3 months later. Darren Stewart got KO'd. I know it doesn't say KO loss on his record. And he's not going to be given the same suspension, and he's not going to be seeing it the same way as he normally would if it was actually a KO loss in his career. I know it was a no contest, but dude, you got fucking KO'd. You got dropped before that KO. Like, don't turn around in 3 months. This really benefits Eryk Anders. You know what also benefits Eryk Anders? This fight being in the light heavyweight division. Eryk Anders has fought at light heavyweight before. I think this does benefit him. Darren Stewart is a little bit not even of a big middleweight. He's a small middleweight himself. I think this all just benefits Eryk Anders. He's the bigger guy. He's got longer reach. He didn't get concussed 3 months ago like Darren Stewart did. He won the fight in the first place with straight punches over Darren Stewart, who just sort of ducked his head and swung bombs while getting cracked with straight right hands by Eryk Anders. I'm going to go with Eryk Anders here. I was proven wrong, and I'm switching my pick. And now watch Darren Stewart go out there and spin him back, kick him in the fucking face. Either way, Eryk Anders wins this one for sure. Everything's in his favour in this rematch. I'm going with Anders by TKO in the first round without the illegal knees. Moving on up the card, Drew Dober versus Brad Riddell. I'm going with Brad Riddell. I like Drew Dober. I think he's a little bit sloppy on the feet in certain exchanges. I know he has that KO over Nasrat Haqparast. I feel like that was a little bit of Nasrat Haqparast's foolishness, rather than Drew Dober being excellent and amazing and getting a first round KO. Don't get me wrong, it was a great KO. Nice little lead hook as Nasrat went for the leg kick, but at the same time, Nasrat did just stand right in front of him and throw a leg kick with no setup whatsoever and just stand there with his hands down, basically asking to be KO'd. Either way, I'm going to be going with Brad Riddell. I think he's younger, which he is. He's got better cardio, I would say, than Drew Dober. I think this is going to be a great scrap. I think Drew Dober's going to win the first round. I think Brad Riddell's going to start to make a comeback as the rounds go on with his cardio, show some more versatility by going to the body, whereas Drew Dober might be headhunting a little bit in this fight. I think this is going to be a stand-up war. Back and forth, absolute fucking chaos. But Drew Dober I can see being a little bit less efficient with his energy and maybe start swinging a little bit heavy in that first round, looking for the KO on Brad Riddell. I think it's going to be a great scrap. I don't see Riddell being KO'd. I see Dober looking for a KO. I see Dober definitely looking for a KO and swinging real heavy. And then Brad Riddell's going to make a comeback on a little bit of a tired Drew Dober in the second and third round. And Brad Riddell will get the job done using volume as the fight goes on. Moving on up the card to the main card, Paul Craig versus Jamahal Hill. I'm going with Jamahal Hill. I think it's a very, very obvious prediction. Paul Craig is good. He's got decent grappling, but again, does he really? Because he just out-grappled Shogun Rua. And if my nan shot a decent double leg, Shogun might be in trouble at this point, in all honesty. I don't know what to really make of Paul Craig's wins recently, man. I really don't. The Shogun Rua win is just an old man with no testosterone in his body whatsoever. Paul Craig got the takedown, ended up doing quite well. Let's not forget before that he went to a draw with Shogun as well, which is just embarrassing, in my opinion. He's a great fighter, though. He's got a win over Magomed Ankalaev. He's got a win over Kennedy Nzechukwu. He's got a bunch of really good wins, and he's got a nice little triangle win over Gadzi Hurmatantigulov as well. They call him El Khalifi because he takes out all of the Dagestani guys. If you are Dagestani, Paul Craig is putting you in a fucking triangle, and there's nothing you can do about it. But Jamahal Hill He's got good takedown defense. We saw that. He's got good head movement as well. And I just think his striking is on such a different level to Paul Craig. And Craig is a little bit chinny. I'm going to call a first round KO for Jamahal Hill. Straight shot down the pipe. Straight on the chin. Down goes Paul Craig. Jamahal Hill gets it done. He's got a reach advantage. He's got some youth on his side as well. Plus, he's really young in the game of MMA, taken basically no damage. 8-0. Should be 9-0, really. He's not 8-0. He's 9-0. He beat Klidson Farias Diabriu. He tested positive for marijuana. Who the fuck cares? He got the win over Klidson. He's 9-0. All really impressive wins. Darko Stozic, he scored him over 3 rounds. Like, Darko has gone to fights with other people like Kennedy Nzechukwu and lost it based on groin shots and point deductions. Like, Darko wasn't the best, but he was here and he was okay. And Jamahal Hill really just outclassed him over 3 rounds. And I like his takedown defense. And I like the IQ he showed against OSP. Not to rush things, to work the body a little bit, to then go upstairs, not to swarm himself, keep his range while he's going for a finish. I think he'll finish Paul Craig against the cage in round 1, and Jamahal Hill gets it done. Moving on up the card, Demian Maia versus Belal Muhammad. I'm going with Belal Muhammad. Okay? I really believe he wins this one. I think the cardio is going to help, and I also feel like this is the last of Demian Maia. Maybe he likes to match up for himself, but Belal Muhammad is no slouch on the ground in fights. Like, it's not like he just gets dominated in the grappling department, but he's a good striker, in which case maybe I'd argue that Demian Maia could get a win against him. I think the Demian Maia that showed up against Gilbert Burns, and even the Maia that showed up against Ben Askren, Demian Maia made Jake Paul look great. You know what I mean? I feel like he's done. And I think the testosterone is lowering. He's not quite got the same pop in anything that he does in terms of takedowns, in terms of strength, in terms of constricting chokes. I can see Belal Muhammad, the veteran that he is, even despite not having the most experience in the world, he's been around the top of the game for a very long time now, been in the UFC for a very long time. He's lost to Vicente Luque by KO. Jeff Neal, he went to a scrappy decision with, but got beaten up a little bit in that fight in some moments. He's had some good wins. He's had some good losses to decent opponents as well. I reckon he's going to be okay to go out there on this 4-fight win streak of his. I know he lost a no contest to Leon Edwards. I feel that's going to give him some confidence because he didn't get finished in 2 rounds against Leon Edwards. Got his first main event. Kind of got used to being the spotlight of everything, and now he's taking on Demian Maia, so it's not like he's going to be nervous going against Maia. He just stepped up to take on Leon Edwards. I think that he's going to go out there, get his back taken in the first round, maybe escape out of it or just survive with Demian Maia looking for a submission on him until the end of the round. And I just don't think the sport really likes Demian Maia's style right now in terms of judging, in terms of refereeing. They will separate that thing if that does not... If Demian Maia's not choking you out within a minute, they're probably going to take him off of you, in all honesty. And I think that's going to really negatively affect him. The company wants Belal Muhammad to win. They know Maia's an old man who's probably going to retire after this as well. I'm going to go with Belal Muhammad winning this one 29-28, losing the first round, coming back in the second 2, and putting a bit of volume on Demian Maia and just having very, very okay takedown defense, which is going to save him in this fight. Moving on up the card, Belal Muhammad gets it done. Who's next on the card? Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. I'm going with Leon Edwards because I have a brain. And that is not really a prediction that you should be picking a fight based on. But I've never been more confident about something in my life. And people could look back on this a week after the fight or the night after the fight and be laughing at me because Nate Diaz has somehow beaten Leon Edwards. And I've said this before, out of all of the fights that are signed right now in the UFC, if someone had a gun to my head and said you need to pick a fight correctly, and if it's wrong, we're going to shoot you, but if it's correct, you're going to live, I would pick Leon Edwards to beat Nate Diaz and beat him very impressively. And I'm actually going to go with Leon Edwards by TKO in that fight. I think Nate Diaz is just a little bit of a... Man, Nate Diaz fans, you don't like me because I really do tell the truth about Nate Diaz. He's a little bit of a soy boy bitch. I know he's like a West Coast gangster. What's up, Statchin, what's up? I get it. But he is a little bit of a soy boy Since he's been vegan, the muscle definition has gone down. Okay, the cardio seems to have not been so good either. So it's not like I'm going to pick him to go out there and swarm Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards has 5-round cardio. He's gone 5 rounds with a guy like RDA who was able to beat Nate Diaz to a decision as well. Earlier in their career, I understand, but still Leon Edwards beat RDA over 5 rounds. He was beating Belal Muhammad in his last fight quite comfortably. I'm going to go with Leon Edwards really beating the shit out of Nate Diaz here, making his name, making his statement against Nate Diaz. Unless this sport is rigged, there is 0 chance Nate Diaz wins this fight. That's just what I'm going to say. I think Leon Edwards is better striking, arguably better grappling. I don't see... When's the last time Nate Diaz submitted someone who wasn't Conor McGregor stepping up from featherweight to 170 on short notice with staph infection? Not really ever. I'm going with Leon Edwards. Don't see him getting submitted. Don't see him gassing out. Don't see him being knocked out. Nate Diaz has little to no power in the 170-pound division. I'm going to go Leon Edwards, and I think I'm going to pick him by finish. TKO. I think he'll want to get a TKO because he wants to claim his title shot, because I'm sure he's hearing that Colby Covington's next, and he's like, I'm going to have to fucking do something about that and get a real win here against Nate Diaz. He knows if he doesn't perform well, he won't get a title shot from this. I'm calling a Leon Edwards body kick TKO in the 3rd round against Nate Diaz. Edwards gets it done. Moving on up the card, Deiveson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. I'm going with Deiveson Figueiredo. Dus die guerra. I think he gets it done. God of War. I like Brandon Moreno. And this is a great fight, by the way. Deiveson Figueiredo, Brandon Moreno, the rematch of the ages we've been waiting for. This was the fight of the year, in my opinion. But, of course, there was females in the conversation, so they win because it's the fucking world. Figueiredo Moreno was way more fun than Joanne Jędrzejczyk versus Weili Zhang. Amazing scrap back and forth. Moreno had some moments. Figueiredo won the fight early on in the first 2 rounds, I thought. Round 3, I actually think could go either way, and that's either if you want to give a 10-8 to Moreno or a 9-9. Then Moreno gets a 10-9 in the 4th round and rocks Deiveson Figueiredo. Round 5, Figueiredo toughs it out and gets the win and does better in round 5 and ends it in a real dominant fashion, raining down big shots of ground and pound. I'm going with Deiveson Figueiredo here. You want to know why? It's exactly the same fight, but this time Figueiredo's not in hospital the night before, sorry. Not even the week before. This time Deiveson Figueiredo is not in hospital the night before with food poisoning. Like, that's kind of what this is based on. In all honesty, the prediction. I've made a former prediction to this video without that factor in. So if you want to see that, it's on my channel somewhere, and I'm doing another one this week as well, where I'll break it down in more detail. I like Deiveson Figueiredo. He showed he had the power advantage. He showed he could out-jab Moreno, despite Moreno having a bit of a reach advantage on him as well, which I thought was very, very impressive, because usually Figueiredo is kind of able to bully his opponents with his reach in the flyweight division, and Moreno's got a 70-inch reach, 2 inches longer than Deiveson Figueiredo, and Figueiredo was still able to land that jab whenever he wanted to. Close fight, don't get me wrong. I think this time Deiveson Figueiredo gets the win and just looks more impressive because, again, it's exactly the same fight between exactly the same people. Both guys took their damage. Moreno took the broken damage. I think Figueiredo took more of the swelling and the concussion, but Moreno took a lot of concussion as well. But Moreno took more of like the broken face, the broken arm, the hand starts hurting, he pulls a muscle in his shoulder. Like, he took more of the damage you're going to have to recover from and take time to recover from. Also, Figueiredo in the first fight took the fight on 3 weeks turnaround, which Moreno did as well. But for a guy who cuts the amount of weight that Figueiredo does, that 3-week turnaround, it's not good to be cutting yourself that much weight twice over. You know what I mean? So I'm going to say Figueiredo. He doesn't have to drain himself twice, because we saw what happened to Tony Ferguson against Gaethje when he cut weight beforehand. And Figueiredo might cut more weight than Ferguson at this point in his career anyway. Figueiredo, this time without being in hospital the night before. Dana White said it happened. Figueiredo said it happened. Waleed Ismail said it happened. The commentary was saying it was happening. Someone else said it happened. Ariel Helwani, Daniel Cormier. So many people have said that Figueiredo was in hospital the night before with food poisoning. You have to believe it. He was. That's final. I'm going with Figueiredo here, purely for that reason. I think that Figueiredo is better without food poisoning than with it. And maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out if this world makes sense. Moving on, but the odds are ridiculous. Moreno should not be that big of an underdog. It was a draw. What the fuck? No way should he be that big of an underdog. It should be like a plus 180 something or something like that. He's like plus 200. Like, what the fuck is going on there? Either way, main event. Israel Adesanya versus Marvin Vettori 2, the rematch. And I've been waiting for this one for a very long time. I haven't been, to be honest with you, because it only got announced recently, and it was really hastily put together, and I didn't want this fight to be made. I wanted to see Whittaker versus Adesanya too, but Adesanya wants to get a nice little warm-up fight for the Whittaker one, get himself back down to middleweight and get himself used to that weight again against Marvin Vettori, who just went 5 rounds with Kevin Holland. Didn't take too much damage in that fight, so I don't think that's going to be a factor. It's not like Vettori's going to have all of these injuries, but one thing, Vettori did say after that fight with Kevin Holland, ideally give me until October to recover, and then I'll go up and fight for the belt against Israel Adesanya. October and June are 2 very fucking different dates. And when the media asked Marvin Vettori, there's an opportunity for a title shot if you're fast on a turnaround, when do you think you can be back in here? And Vettori said October, maybe September, and he's back in June. I don't like that. I really don't like that. It tells me that he wanted to improve and he didn't get his chance to. I'm going with Israel Adesanya here, but down to the details. Adesanya's got better stand-up. Adesanya's got better stand-up than Kevin Holland, who was able to do quite well on the feet against Marvin Vettori. I'd argue that Holland is actually a little bit more of a weird style matchup than Adesanya. Adesanya does things very technically. Holland will throw looping shots out of nowhere. And Holland has, I think, the longest reach in the entire UFC. 83 inches, which is even making Israel Adesanya's reach look a little bit small. Either way, Holland's got a ridiculous reach for the UFC. Adesanya's got a long reach as well. Similar build to Holland, so I think where Holland had some success, Adesanya can have that same success. The first fight was very close, and closer than people think, and I know that people sort of disregard Vettori because he said he won. He didn't win the first fight, we all know that. He lost the first 2 rounds, he won the third. That's kind of how it was. There's no argument for Vettori winning. But the round 1 was very close. Very, very close in round 1. Round 3's Vettori's, round 2's Adesanya's. Adesanya won round 1, but it was a competitive round. And people are taking that away from Vettori because they're so angry that he's deluding himself to believe that he won that fight, whereas in reality, it was a very close fight. And if Vettori just came forward and said, look how close the fight was, I think I'm going to do really well. I think people would have a different opinion, and the odds maybe would be a little bit different as well, because Adesanya should not be that much of a favourite. We saw what happened against Jan Blachowicz. He just got out-techniqued for 5 rounds on the feet striking. So things can happen if you just play Adesanya's game and actually play the technical striking game with Israel Adesanya. There are some chances for you to win. I just think at middleweight, he's got too much of a reach advantage over these opponents, too much of a height advantage over these opponents. He's not a small guy for middleweight. He drains weight like everyone else. I know Marvin Vettori is a big guy, and people are going to talk about the size of Vettori. They're both big guys for the division. If you think Israel Adesanya doesn't cut weight, you're just dumb. He cuts about 15 pounds at least for the middleweight division. I think he walks around 200. He said on JRE when he was at middleweight before that he walks around at 205. Either way, Israel Adesanya's getting this one done. Too rangy on the feet. Better takedown defense than Kevin Holland. And I think he's going to beat a gassed out Marvin Vettori over 5 rounds. Because don't get me wrong, Vettori can go 5 rounds when he grapples Kevin Holland. And when he gets every takedown. And when he gets time to breathe on top of Kevin Holland after every single takedown that's successful. When he gets about 3 minutes to just lay there and recompose and get his breath back. And get back in the swing of things with his cardio. With Israel Adesanya, I think what's going to happen is this. Vettori's maybe going to make the first round really close and maybe steal the round off of pressure and going for takedowns and maybe getting a couple of them. And Adesanya just probably won't pull the trigger in the stand-up. And I think he's actually going to lose the first round against Marvin Vettori. The second round, Adesanya's going to start finding his range a little bit more. Marvin Vettori will fail some takedowns in this fight. And I think that's the big difference between this one and the Kevin Holland one. The difference between the technique of takedown defense between Israel Adesanya and Kevin Holland is the fact that Adesanya, in my opinion, is going to stuff more takedowns. And because he's stuffing those takedowns, Vettori's going to be using a lot of energy to not get enough break time. And he's going to be back at range with Adesanya after failing some takedowns. I think Adesanya's got better cardio, and I think he'll finish Marvin Vettori in round 4. Round 4 TKO against the cage. It's going to be more exhaustion-based than Vettori getting lit up and put down. I think he's just sort of going to go down against the cage, clutching himself, hovering over, and Adesanya finishes the job in round 4. Vettori a little bit too tired to continue. I'm actually going to call a body kick, starting it all off as well for Israel Adesanya. I think he'll go up high with the hands. Vettori will lift his hands up real laboured, revealing the body. Adesanya will slam a body kick in there afterwards, and Vettori will start to shell up against the cage and go down and accept a TKO. Israel Adesanya round 4. And also, if that wasn't enough explaining for me to convince you that Adesanya is going to win, he grew a breast on one side from nothing to massive tit hanging off of him on a remote island in the middle of a global pandemic. He refused to reveal the doctor's note that told him what it was that could clear his entire legacy of any doubt of steroids. He refused to show us that piece of paper that would clear his entire name because he wants to keep us guessing. He's on roids. It's so fucking obvious. I've had this argument so many times. There's no excuse for his gyno on one side to go from nothing to massive tit out of nowhere, other than an amazing hormone imbalance, and he's not going through puberty. He's been an athlete his whole life. He's in the middle of his 30s. There is no excuse for that. He is on roids. And I think that's a big factor, and I'm going to include... Don't take this as offensive. If you're an Israel Adesanya fan, do not be offended by me saying that. I'm making my prediction. I'm putting my fucking money down on the line. And there's a solid chance he's on roids. And what do you know? He's the one chance at a superstar for the UFC right now if Conor McGregor loses for Dustin Poirier. So I'm going to go with Israel Adesanya. Round 4 TKO. Better cardio. Better striking. And Vettori just, in my opinion, doesn't have enough time to develop himself. You know, like he fought a couple of months ago, 2 months ago, no, not even 2 months, a month and a half ago, something like that. Maybe if Vettori got another 6 months or another year, and Adesanya was a little bit older, and Adesanya was 32, and Vettori was 28, and Vettori had gotten another win over Paulo Costa and gone another 5 rounds, and dealt with cardio a little bit more, and added some more moves to his game, maybe Vettori could get this one done. But Adesanya has sniped Vettori prematurely here, and Vettori has not had any time to improve his game whatsoever. And I think we're just going to see the same Vettori that showed up against Kevin Holland, because you can't improve during a training camp. Yusuf Salau has proved that many times before. I'm going with Israel Adesanya round 4 TKO. Like and subscribe. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.